Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name's Marisa and I am here on YouTube to talk about all things curly hair related. Thank you for being here, and if you enjoy this video, please give a thumbs up and consider subscribing if you'd like to see more from me. Today's video is all about haircuts. When you're a curly girl, what kind of haircut can you get? What should you ask for? And what things you should avoid when you're getting your hair cut. First of all, there are many different ways that you can get your curly hair cut. You could go to a curly specialist. They might do a dry cut. They might do a wet cut and then a bit of dry cutting. Or you might go to a regular hairdresser who just does a straight, normal wet cut. There is no right or wrong. So some curly girls find that their hair prefers a dry cut, like mine certainly does. I actually cut my hair myself and I do it dry and I do it curl by curl, each individual curl, and cut the end. And I have a video which I will link for you. One of the reasons that often curly hair is best to be cut dry is because you have different curl patterns. So for example, I've got some more ringlety sections underneath, but here at the front, I've got some sections that are almost straight or just a little bit wavy. So if I was to cut my hair wet and, pull it down and cut it, then when it was dry, the curls some would spring up really far and some would spring up just a little bit or not at all. And years ago, before I knew about any of this, I used to get a regular wet cut, and I always had a section right at the back here where the hair was so tightly curled that it would sit up underneath the rest of my hair, and it would look like my haircut went like this at the back, and it used to drive me mad. And I did actually kind of figure it out myself and ask my hairdresser to leave that longer at the back, longer than she thought necessary, and it did help. But even better than that is a dry cut, because I can see exactly how my hair is going to sit, almost a bit like topiary, like they do on these bushes and they cut them to make them into a shape. Well, that's how I cut my hair, and that's how a lot of curly specialists would cut your hair as well, into a specific shape while your hair is dry, so they can see how it's going to sit normally every day. Some curly hair does, like I say, prefer to be cut dry. Other curly hair is perfectly fine being cut wet, or even better being cut wet. So it's just about finding what works for you. Another thing to take into consideration is budget, because oftentimes a curly specialist is going to be a lot more expensive than a regular hairdresser. Yet another thing to take into consideration is geography, because I know for me, I do not have any curly specialists within a couple of hours of me in any direction. So it might just be that there aren't many curly specialists where you live, and you don't want to make that big journey, or you can't make that big journey to go and get your hair cut by a specialist. Even within curly specialists, there's lots of different types of curl cut. So there's a diva cut, there's a wee dad cut, there's a riso cut, and there's loads more of different techniques, different ways of cutting curly hair. You can just type into Google curly specialist in my area and it should show you if there are any close by to you. But what if, for whatever reason, you're not going to go to a curly specialist? What do you ask your regular hairdresser to get the best out of your curly or wavy hair? We're going to have a talk about some things that it's good to ask for and some things it's good to avoid when getting your hair cut. Say you're going to a regular hairdresser. Maybe it's your hairdresser you've gone to for years and you trust them, and you want to keep going to them, and that's fine. Maybe they listen to you and you feel like they just get you. There's nothing wrong with that, and there's no reason for you to change to a curly specialist unless you want to. Well, first of all, I would absolutely recommend having a chat with the hairdresser before you go for your appointment. A lot of hairdressers offer a consultation that is free, either in person or over the phone, and this can just give you a bit of a vibe for the hairdresser, for the stylist. And if you're telling them about what your wants for your hair and how you care for your hair, if you feel like they're looking at you funny or they're dismissing what you're saying, then to me that would give me alarm bells right there and then, because you want a stylist who's going to do what you want with your hair. Obviously they have the knowledge and they understand how hair works, so it's not that we're not trusting them, but at the same time, if you just get a vibe with somebody that they're not listening to you, then I would say stop at that point and try someone else, because there are many non-curly stylists out there who are open to listening to what you have to say about your hair and to appreciate that actually you know your hair best because you've lived with it all these years. So have that discussion with them, let them know what you want. Some hairdressers may even let you bring your own products in if you don't want to use their products. Perhaps they've got silicons or sulfates and maybe you don't want to use them. So some hairdressers will be open to that. Others might not be, or maybe you don't really care because it's just a one-off and you just will clarify afterwards. It's up to you really. Once you get a feeling for a hairdresser and you're actually there and discussing your haircut with them, here are some things that you might want to say to them. So first of all, in most cases, you don't want your hair to be thinned or texturized. So you know those scissors that aren't quite scissors that hairdressers use, and they've got little kind of ridges all the way up the side? I'll pop in a picture. Those are thinning shears, and they can be used to thin out thick hair and to texturize your hair. But when your hair is curly, you really want all the hair to stay intact so that you get nice smooth clumps. If your hair has been thinned out and texturized, it's going to increase your frizz and you're going to end up with really wispy ends of your curls. So that is something in most cases to avoid. Slicing into your hair like this to thin it out is another thing that in most cases is not great for curly hair. Sometimes it does work, especially if someone's got an absolute ton of hair or really thick hair. But in most cases, if your hair is fine and not that thick, then that would be something to avoid as well. Layers are a great way to get volume. We're asking for them to be cut blunt, straight across. Could even be point cut, but not cut into, sliced or texturized. The more layers you have, the shorter layers you have, the more rounded shape you're going to achieve. If you have an idea of how you want your hair to look before you go in, then take pictures with you. Don't just take one picture, take maybe 4 or 5 or 6 pictures, because just looking at one picture, you and your stylist could actually be seeing completely different things. I've been in that situation before, back when I used to colour my hair, when I'm looking at a picture and seeing one thing and my colourist was seeing something completely different from the same picture. And afterwards, they really felt they'd achieved what was in that picture and I really felt they hadn't. But if you take multiple pictures with you, then there's a much better chance that you're going to be on the same page about what you're looking for. And bear in mind that if the person in those pictures has a completely different hair type or texture to you, then your hair's probably not ever going to look quite like that. So be realistic about your expectations. So let's say you've sat in the hairdresser's chair, you've had your hair cut, you are looking at it in the mirror and thinking, oh my goodness, this is awful. First of all, don't panic straight away, because oftentimes hairdressers have no clue how to style curly hair. Unless it's really, really clearly an awful cut, in which case you might want to say something right there and then. Most cases I would say go away, wash your hair, do your own routine, give it a couple of washes, and if you're still really unhappy, then get in touch with them and ask them to fix it. Most hairdressers would much rather that you got in touch and asked them to fix it, rather than just not going back and being really upset with your hair. In some cases, they'll give you a higher level of stylist to fix whatever it is you're not happy with. Haircut shock is a real thing. So quite often people find that their hair is just not curling anymore after a haircut and they can't figure it out. Sometimes hair definitely goes into a little bit of a shock after it's being cut, which is understandable, I suppose, when you think about it. And it can take a few weeks and a few washes for your curls to just kind of get their groove back. So if that happens to you, don't panic. Try deep conditioning, try protein treatment, and just give your hair time to recover, and 9 times out of 10 it will. And lastly, just remember that there is no one size fits all rule when it comes to cutting your curls. There are no rules. Do what works for you. If you have a hairdresser that you love, who's not a curly specialist, don't feel like you have to dump them just because they're not a curly specialist. You might be able to continue going to them and get a great cut for your curly or wavy hair. If you haven't got a hairdresser that you like and you can't find one, then honestly, try cutting your own hair. You just need to get yourself a really sharp pair of hairdressing shears. You can get them for £10, $10 online, really not expensive. And don't use them for anything else, just keep them for cutting your hair, and literally just lift one curl at a time and trim the ends, and you'll be amazed how easy it is, even if you just do that as a kind of an intermediate thing just to tide you over until you can see a hairdresser again. It's a lot easier than it looks, and curls are very forgiving, thank goodness for that. So if you have any other questions about getting haircuts when you're a curly girl, then please leave them in the comments and I will try and answer every single one. And if you have any other topics that you'd like me to discuss on here, again, leave it in the comments and I will get to it. I hope you're having a great day. Please give this video a thumbs up if you liked it and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Bye.